The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and cheap cologne. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too cold. Naomi Carter sat perfectly still at the long glass table, her hands folded, nails pressed into her palm to keep them from shaking. Across from her, the vice president smiled the way men did when they'd already decided the ending. "We're just saying you're not a cultural fit," he said lightly, eyes sliding past her to the whiteboard. "This isn't personal." Naomi's pulse thundered in her ears. She replayed the last 6 months like a silent film, being talked over in meetings, her reports rewritten with someone else's name, the jokes that landed wrong, but were followed by relax. It's just humor. The compliance violations she flagged. The numbers she refused to falsify. She glanced around the table. HR avoided her eyes. Her manager stared at his laptop, like it might save him. "You asked me to lie," Naomi said, her voice calm, dangerously steady. "I said no." The smile tightened. A pen clicked. Paper slid across the table. Termination letter. The vice president leaned forward just enough for his words to cut clean. "People like you always make things difficult." The room went quiet. Too quiet. Naomi stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor, an ugly human sound. She walked out without another word, the echo of her heels following her down the hallway as doors stayed shut. In the parking lot, rain began to fall. Her phone vibrated once. Unknown number. She answered, breath hitching. "Ms. Carter." A woman said on the other end, voice precise, urgent. "This call may change everything. Do you have a moment to talk?" Naomi looked back at the building that had just erased her. "Yes," she said. Naomi knew the meeting was a setup before she sat down. The calendar invite had been vague. Quick sync, no agenda. 3 people added at the last minute. HR never scheduled quick meetings on Fridays. They scheduled endings. She entered conference room B with her shoulders straight and her face neutral, the way she'd learned to move through hostile rooms without giving anyone the satisfaction of reaction. The table was too long. The chairs were spaced too far apart. Every detail screamed formality, pretending to be casual. Mark Reynolds, her manager, didn't stand when she walked in. "Naomi," he said, already exhaling like this was an inconvenience. "Thanks for coming." She nodded once. "You asked me to." Angela from HR offered a thin smile that never reached her eyes. The third man, Evan Cole, vice president of operations, tapped his pen against a legal pad, rhythm steady, practiced. Naomi sat. Mark cleared his throat. "We're going to keep this brief." "Of course." Angela folded her hands. "This conversation is confidential." Evan leaned back. "And not disciplinary." Naomi almost smiled. Every disciplinary conversation started that way. "What's this about?" she asked. Mark glanced at Evan, then at the table. "We've been reviewing compliance reports you submitted last quarter." Naomi's spine stiffened. "Okay." "There were concerns," Evan said smoothly. "About tone, interpretation." "Facts don't have tone," Naomi replied. Angela shifted. "Naomi, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about alignment." There it was, the word that swallowed truth whole. Naomi's fingers curled together under the table. "You asked me to remove flag transactions. I refused. That's not misalignment. That's policy." Mark finally looked at her, irritation flickering across his face. "You could have handled it differently." "How?" she asked. "By lying?" Evan's smile thinned. "By understanding context." Silence stretched. The hum of the lights pressed into Naomi's skull. "So this is retaliation," she said quietly. Angela inhaled sharply. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," Naomi said, voice steady, "is being punished for doing my job." Mark's jaw tightened. "You're being emotional." Naomi felt the familiar heat rise, the warning flare she'd learned to suppress. Emotional, difficult, aggressive. The same words recycled. Evan slid a folder across the table. "We've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." The folder stopped inches from her hand. "For compliance?" Naomi asked. "For fit," Evan replied. "This role requires collaboration." Naomi laughed once, short and sharp. "You mean obedience." Angela stood. Security will escort you out. Naomi pushed her chair back and rose. Her heart pounded, but her voice didn't shake. Put it in writing, she said. It's all there, Evan said. Severance is outlined. Naomi didn't touch the folder. She picked up her bag instead. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Mark muttered. She met his eyes. You already decided. As she walked out, no one stopped her. The hallway felt longer than usual. People avoided looking up as she passed. A few screens reflected her face back at her, composed, controlled, erased. Outside, rain soaked through her jacket instantly. The parking lot shimmered, gray and empty. Naomi unlocked her car and sat inside without starting it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Carter, a woman said. My name is Rachel Moore. I represent a group of minority shareholders in your former company. Naomi's breath caught. How did you get this number? Because you told the truth, Rachel said. And because they underestimated what that would cost them. Naomi closed her eyes, rain streaking the windshield like tears she refused to shed. What do you want from me? She asked. Rachel paused. Everything you tried to protect. Naomi opened her eyes. Yes, she said. Naomi didn't cry when she got home. She kicked off her shoes by the door, hung her soaked jacket on the chair instead of the hook, and stood in the middle of her apartment like she was waiting for instructions that never came. The silence felt heavier than the conference room. No buzzing lights. No polished smiles. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the rain tapping the windows like it wanted to be let in. Her phone lit up. Mark, this didn't have to go this way. Angela, HR wishing you the best in your next chapter. Co-worker number 1, I'm so sorry. Call me if you need anything. Co-worker number 2, I didn't know what to say in the meeting. Naomi stared at the screen. Messages without meaning. Support without risk. Everyone suddenly fluent in regret now that there were no consequences for them. She placed the phone face down on the counter. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection looked the same. Brown skin, tight bun, tired eyes. But something underneath had shifted. 6 years at that company. 6 years of shrinking herself just enough to survive. She remembered the first warning. You're very articulate. A director had said during her first performance review, as if it surprised him. The second, you should let others speak more, even though she was the only one interrupted. The third, you don't want to be seen as confrontational. After she pointed out missing numbers in a report that later turned out to be fraudulent. Every time she adjusted, softened, smiled. Still not enough. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Ms. Carter, Rachel Moore said. Her voice was calm, practiced, but not unkind. Thank you for agreeing to talk earlier. I know today wasn't easy. You're calling it a strange time, Naomi said. There's no good time for this conversation, Rachel replied, but there's a necessary one. Naomi leaned against the counter. Start talking. Rachel didn't waste words. Your compliance reports flag irregular transactions tied to senior leadership bonuses. Those reports disappeared internally. 2 weeks later, you were terminated. Naomi closed her eyes. So, we know more than you think, Rachel said. You weren't the first to raise concerns. You're the first they punished publicly. Naomi's jaw tightened. Why me? Because you wouldn't back down, Rachel said. And because you don't fit the image they're comfortable controlling. There it was. No coded language. No pretending. Rachel continued. Our clients hold a significant minority stake. We initiated an internal audit months ago. Your reports confirm what they tried to bury. Naomi exhaled slowly. What do you want? We want you to testify, Rachel said. Formally. On record. Naomi laughed, bitter. So I can be blacklisted? Possibly, Rachel admitted. Retaliation is subtle when it's legal. Naomi pushed off the counter and paced. You know what they'll say about me. Yes, Rachel said. That you're emotional, difficult, that you misunderstood instructions. That I'm angry, Naomi added. That I played the race card. Rachel was quiet for a beat. And they'll be wrong. Naomi stopped pacing. Being right doesn't pay rent. No, Rachel said. but silence lets them win. Naomi sank onto the couch. Her chest felt tight, like the room was shrinking. I did everything right, she said softly, and they still crushed me. They assumed you'd swallow it, Rachel said. Most people do. Naomi pictured the folder sliding across the table, the pen clicking, the smile. What happens if I say no? Naomi asked. Rachel didn't dodge it. They move on. Promotions continue. Bonuses get paid. Another employee learns a lesson you were meant to teach. Naomi closed her eyes. A memory surfaced. Her younger cousin asking why she worked so hard if it never seemed fair. Send me the documents. Naomi said. I will, Rachel replied. But I need you to understand the scope. This won't be quick, and it won't be clean. Naomi opened her eyes. Nothing ever is. After the call ended, Naomi sat in the dark, laptop open, documents loading one by one, redacted emails, altered spreadsheets, her original reports, untouched, precise, ignored. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. They hadn't just fired her. They'd planned it. A knock at the door made her flinch. She stood slowly, heart racing, then opened it to find her neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, holding a small plate. I saw you come home soaked, the woman said gently. You look like you forgot to eat. Naomi swallowed. Thank you. Mrs. Alvarez studied her face. Bad day? Naomi hesitated, then nodded. Mrs. Alvarez squeezed her hand once. They always think we'll be quiet. Naomi closed the door and leaned against it, plate warming her palms. Her phone buzzed again. Breaking news alert. She ignored it. For now. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. And they had no idea what they'd just started. The law office sat above a bakery that smelled like sugar and burned butter, an almost cruel contrast to what waited upstairs. Naomi noticed it as she climbed the steps, hand tight on the railing, breath measured. She had dressed carefully. Navy blazer, flat shoes, hair pulled back. Not to impress, but to armor herself against the assumption she knew would arrive before she spoke. Rachel Moore met her at the door with a firm handshake. Thank you for coming, she said, eyes steady. They tried to delay this. Naomi followed her down a narrow hallway into a conference room with scuffed floors and mismatched chairs. No glass walls. No branding. Just purpose. Two other attorneys waited. A man with salt and pepper hair closed his laptop. A younger woman slid a recorder onto the table. Before we begin, Rachel said, I need to ask this plainly. Are you here voluntarily? Naomi nodded. Yes. And you understand the risks? Yes. Rachel glanced at the others. All right. The recorder clicked on. Ms. Carter, the younger woman said, tell us about the first time you were asked to alter a report. Naomi's mouth went dry. She took a breath. It was February. Mark called me into his office and said leadership wanted the numbers to look less alarming. I asked what that meant. He said, use discretion. Did he specify which numbers? The man asked. Yes, Naomi said. The transactions tied to executive compensation. Rachel leaned forward. What did you say? I said no, Naomi replied. I said compliance reports weren't optional. What happened after? Naomi let out a humorless laugh. I stopped being invited to meetings. My access to certain databases was revoked. I was told to CC Mark on everything. The younger woman frowned. That's significant. It escalated. Naomi continued. My performance review dropped from exceeds expectations to needs improvement without explanation. Rachel's voice was quiet. And the termination meeting? Naomi closed her eyes briefly. The pen clicking, the folder sliding. They said I wasn't a cultural fit. The man nodded slowly. They always do. Rachel slid a stack of papers toward Naomi. These are internal emails. Read the highlighted section. Naomi scanned the page. Her stomach twisted. If she won't cooperate, we need to cut exposure. That's about me, Naomi said. Yes, Rachel replied. Sent 3 days before your firing. Naomi pressed her lips together. They planned it. They assumed you wouldn't fight, Rachel said. The recorder hummed. The room felt smaller. What do you need from me? Naomi asked. Your testimony, the man said. and permission to use your documentation. Naomi hesitated. What if they come after me? They will, Rachel said honestly, but not the way they think. Naomi looked at her. Explain. Rachel folded her hands. We're filing a shareholder action at dawn. Once it's public, they'll scramble. Statements will be made. Apologies drafted. But evidence doesn't care about spin. Naomi nodded slowly. And me? You become central, Rachel said. Not a villain, a witness. Naomi's phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it. The younger woman cleared her throat. One more thing. We need to discuss equity. Naomi blinked. Equity. Rachel exchanged a look with the others. During restructuring, shares tied to fraudulent compensation may be frozen or redistributed. Our clients want you protected. Protected how? Naomi asked. With a trust, Rachel said. Conditional, temporary. Naomi stared. You're saying I could have ownership, Rachel finished, if this proceeds as expected. Naomi laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Yesterday I was fired. And yesterday they underestimated you, Rachel replied. Silence settled. Heavy, electric. Naomi thought of the messages she hadn't answered. The hallway she'd walked down alone. The rain on her windshield. I'll do it, she said. Rachel reached out, steady. Once we file, there's no undoing this. Naomi met her gaze. They already took what they could. The recorder clicked off. As Naomi left the building, her phone vibrated again. She checked it this time. Breaking news. Major corporation faces shareholder lawsuit over compliance violations. Her name wasn't there. Not yet. Across the street, a reporter adjusted a camera. Speaking urgently into a microphone, Naomi pulled her coat tighter and kept walking, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something sharper. Resolve. Because for the first time since that conference room, the power wasn't entirely theirs anymore. And they were about to learn what happens when the truth doesn't stay buried. The company statement dropped at 8:03 a.m. Naomi saw it while standing in line for coffee, her phone buzzing against the counter like it was nervous. The barista called out a name she didn't recognize. Naomi scrolled. We take these allegations seriously. We are committed to transparency. We do not tolerate retaliation. The words were polished until they were meaningless. By noon, the narrative had shifted. Anonymous sources told friendly outlets that a former employee had misunderstood her role, that she lacked the full picture, that her communication style had been challenging. Naomi read the articles slowly, like she was translating a foreign language she already spoke fluently. Rachel called at one. They're circling, she said. Expect silence from people you thought were solid. Naomi watched the delivery truck crawl past her window. Silence I can handle. Good, Rachel replied, because it's going to get loud in other ways. The first email came from a former teammate. Subject line, hope you're okay. I wish I could say more. It read, things are complicated here. Naomi deleted it. The second came from Mark. This has gone too far. We could have handled this internally. Naomi stared at the screen, then typed one sentence. You fired me for refusing to lie. She didn't send it. By mid-afternoon, her LinkedIn notifications exploded. Profile views from recruiters who wouldn't call, executives who wanted to see what she looked like now that she was labeled a problem. A voicemail arrived from an unfamiliar number. Naomi, this is Paul from Corporate Communications. We'd like to offer you an opportunity to share your perspective, off the record. She laughed, a short sound that surprised her. Off the record meant unprotected, untraceable, disposable. Rachel texted, do not respond. Naomi didn't. That night, she dreamed she was back in conference room B, but this time the chairs were empty. She spoke anyway. No one listened. She woke with her jaw clenched. The next morning, the company announced an internal review led by a consulting firm with deep ties to the board. The press called it accountability. Rachel called it choreography. They're buying time, Rachel said during a video call, and hoping you'll get tired. Naomi sipped cold coffee. They don't know me very well. Rachel smiled. No, they don't. Still, The cost came quietly. Her mother called from Georgia, voice careful. "Baby, are you sure this is safe?" Naomi stared at the floor. "It's already happening." Her brother texted a single line, "Proud of you, whatever you need." That night, Naomi went for a walk, hoodie pulled low. She passed the building where she used to work. Lights on late, silhouettes moving behind glass. She imagined them in meetings, deciding what version of her would survive. The next day, an article appeared questioning her credentials. It cited unnamed colleagues. It ended with a line that felt intentional. Some former employees say Carter struggled to work collaboratively. Naomi closed her laptop and sat very still. "They're doing character assassination," she told Rachel later. "Yes," Rachel said, "because it's cheaper than accountability." "What if it works?" Naomi asked. Rachel paused. "Then we let the evidence speak louder." The evidence spoke 2 days later. A leaked memo surfaced online, an executive thread discussing managing exposure and containing narrative risk. Naomi's name appeared once, then crossed out. The company called it fabricated. Then a second memo appeared. Then a third. Stock dipped. The tone changed. Executives stopped giving interviews. Emails to Naomi stopped entirely. Silence descended like policy. Naomi felt it everywhere, in unanswered calls, in the way acquaintances crossed the street, in the careful distance people kept like her situation might be contagious. One evening, she sat on her couch with the lights off, news playing low. A panel discussed corporate ethics. No one mentioned race. No one mentioned retaliation. Rachel called. "They want to settle," she said. Naomi's heart jumped. "Already?" "Quietly," Rachel replied. "They're offering a severance extension and a mutual non-disclosure." Naomi closed her eyes. "They want me gone." "They want you quiet," Rachel corrected. Naomi thought of the memos, the lies, the meeting already decided. "No," she said. Rachel exhaled, a sound that carried both relief and weight. "Okay, what happens now?" Naomi asked. "Now," Rachel said, "we stop protecting them." That night, Naomi posted nothing. She didn't tweet, didn't comment, didn't correct a record. She opened her laptop and organized files. Dates, times, names, receipts, because silence wasn't empty. It was pressure, and something was about to break. The call came just before sunrise. Naomi was already awake, sitting at her kitchen table with a legal pad full of arrows and dates, when her phone vibrated across the wood. Rachel's name lit the screen. "It's happening," Rachel said without preamble. Federal investigators opened a preliminary inquiry at 5:42 a.m. Naomi closed her eyes, letting the words land. "Preliminary," she repeated. "For now," Rachel replied. "But they don't open those without smoke." Naomi pictured a glass building she used to walk into every morning. Reflective, pristine, untouchable. What do they want? "Documents," Rachel said, "and time will give them both." By mid-morning, the company's lobby filled with unfamiliar suits. Employees whispered. Emails were sent, then recalled. Meetings were canceled without explanation. Naomi watched it unfold from her apartment. News feeds updating in nervous bursts. Sources confirm a federal review. Company declines to comment. Shares dip amid uncertainty. Rachel joined her via video. She looked tired, energized, dangerous. "They've been asked to preserve all internal communications," Rachel said. "That includes personal devices." Naomi smiled faintly. "They hate that." "Yes," Rachel said, "because power assumes privacy." A knock sounded at Naomi's door. She flinched, then relaxed when she saw Mrs. Alvarez through the peephole. "I brought coffee," her neighbor said. Strong. Naomi accepted the mug. "Thank you." Mrs. Alvarez tilted her head. "They're talking about your company on the radio." Naomi nodded. "They're not my company anymore." Mrs. Alvarez's eyes sharpened. "Not yet." Rachel cleared her throat. "There's more." The board convened an emergency session last night. Naomi leaned forward. "About me? About liability?" Rachel said. "You're a variable they can't control." The day moved fast after that. A former colleague emailed Naomi with a subject line that simply read, "I kept everything." Another texted anonymously, "They told us not to talk to investigators. Thought you should know." Naomi forwarded everything to Rachel without comment. By afternoon, the company released another statement. Longer, softer, more desperate. "We welcome oversight. We are cooperating fully. Our values remain unchanged." Naomi laughed aloud. "That's the problem." Rachel nodded. "Values don't change. Exposure does." At 3 p.m., Rachel called again, voice low. "We need to discuss the trust." Naomi's stomach tightened. "Already?" "The investigators froze several executive compensation pools," Rachel said. "Shares tied to those pools are now in limbo." "And me?" "Our clients are moving to protect their position," Rachel said. "They want you as a counterweight." Naomi stood, pacing. "This feels fast." "It is," Rachel agreed, "because once the glass cracks, everyone rushes the exit." Naomi stopped at the window. The city moved like nothing was wrong. "What does it mean?" she asked. Rachel chose her words carefully. "Temporary control through a blind trust. You don't make day-to-day decisions, but your consent becomes necessary for major moves." Naomi swallowed. "They'd have to deal with me." "Yes," Rachel said, publicly. Naomi thought of the termination letter, the escort that never came, the way they'd erased her in minutes. "Do it," she said. Rachel exhaled. "I'll draft the paperwork." The news broke at 6. Federal investigators examined corporate retaliation claims. A former compliance officer central to case. Naomi's name appeared for the first time. Her phone lit up with numbers she didn't recognize. She let them ring. Mark called at 7. She answered. "This is getting out of hand," he said, voice tight. "You don't understand the damage you're causing." Naomi leaned back against the counter. "You fired me. You didn't give us a choice," Mark snapped. "I gave you the truth," Naomi said. "You rejected it." Silence stretched. "They're asking questions," Mark said quietly. "About meetings, emails." Naomi said nothing. "They think you're the hero," he added, bitter. "I'm a witness," Naomi replied. "There's a difference." She hung up. Later that night, Naomi sat with her laptop open, trust documents glowing on the screen, legal language wrapped around possibility like barbed wire. Rachel texted, "Once this is filed, it will be public by morning." Naomi typed back, "I'm ready." She slept lightly, dreams fractured by boardrooms and microphones. At dawn, her phone exploded. Breaking. Board announces leadership changes pending investigation. Shares plunge as confidence shakes. Rachel called, breathless. "The trust is live." Naomi sat up. "Meaning?" Rachel smiled, fierce. "Meaning you own a controlling interest." Naomi stared at the wall, heart pounding. "By morning," Rachel said softly, "they belong to you." Naomi thought of the meeting already decided. The words meant to shrink her. The glass hadn't shattered, but it was cracking everywhere. The hearing room smelled like old carpet and bottled water. Naomi sat at the long table beside Rachel, hands folded, posture straight. Cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking like small, patient eyes. The seal of the agency loomed behind the panel, official, unyielding. Across the room, the executives looked smaller without glass walls and assistants. Dark suits, fixed smiles, careful breaths. Rachel leaned in. "Remember," she murmured, "answer only what's asked." Naomi nodded. The lead investigator cleared his throat. "We'll begin." The first executive, Evan Cole, adjusted his tie as if it could save him. "We take compliance very seriously," he said, voice smooth. "Any suggestion otherwise is an overreaction." Naomi felt her jaw tighten. "An overreaction?" the investigator repeated. "To falsified reports?" Evans smiled thinly. "Misinterpretations. Differences in professional judgment." Rachel scribbled something on her pad. Naomi was called next. She rose, chair scraping softly, and walked to the microphone. The oath was brief. The weight was not. "State your name for the record," the investigator said. "Naomi Carter." "Ms. Carter," he continued, Did you alter any compliance data at the request of your supervisors? No, Naomi said. Were you asked to? Yes. Evans shifted. By whom? Mark Reynolds. Naomi replied. Under direction from senior leadership. Murmurs rippled through the room. Evan leaned forward. Objection. Speculation. The investigator raised a hand. Noted. Naomi's pulse thrummed. I was told to use discretion to minimize executive exposure. Rachel's pen paused. After you refused, the investigator asked, what occurred? Naomi inhaled. I was isolated. My access was restricted. My performance reviews changed without explanation. Then I was terminated. For cause? Another panelist asked. No, Naomi said. Forfeit. A few reporters exchanged looks. Evans shook his head. This narrative ignores context. Rachel stood. Context like these emails? She slid copies across the table. The investigator scanned them, brow furrowing. If she won't cooperate, we need to cut exposure. Evans' face drained of color. That language is unfortunate, he said quickly, but it doesn't indicate intent. The investigator's voice hardened. It indicates planning. Mark Reynolds was called next. He sat stiffly, eyes darting. Did you instruct Miss Carter to alter reports? The investigator asked. Mark hesitated. Too long. I conveyed leadership concerns, he said finally. Did those concerns involve falsifying data? Mark swallowed. I wouldn't phrase it that way. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Would you phrase it as retaliation? Rachel asked. Mark's voice cracked. No. Then why was Miss Carter fired days after refusing your request? Rachel pressed. Mark looked at Evan. The investigator leaned forward. Answer the question. Mark's shoulders slumped. She was difficult. Naomi felt it like a slap. Rachel's voice was calm, lethal. Define difficult. Mark opened his mouth. Closed it. That's enough, the investigator said. We'll take a recess. During the break, Naomi sat still while cameras flashed. Rachel handed her water. You're doing well, Rachel whispered. Naomi nodded, though her hands trembled. When the session resumed, the younger executive spoke, voice rehearsed. This investigation has been disruptive. We believe it's disproportionate to the alleged issues. The investigator stared at him. Disruptive to whom? Silence answered. By evening, clips flooded the news. Executive calls whistleblower difficult under oath. Email suggests retaliation. Naomi watched from her couch, exhaustion sinking deep into her bones. Rachel called. They're unraveling. Naomi rubbed her temples. It doesn't feel like winning. It isn't, Rachel said gently. It's accountability. That night, Naomi dreamed again, but this time the room was full. She spoke. People listened. The next morning, the company announced Evan Cole's resignation effective immediately. The headline used careful words. The truth used sharper ones. Rachel texted, "This is just the beginning." Naomi stared out her window at the city waking up. They called it an overreaction. But overreaction was just another word for consequences arriving late. And they were finally here. Naomi woke to the sound of alerts. Phones buzzing, news chimes, notifications piling up like falling dominoes. She didn't move at first, staring at the ceiling as the sun cut thin streaks through her blinds. Her heart pounded with something she hadn't felt in months. Anticipation. She grabbed her phone. Headlines scrolled endlessly. Major corporation under investigation. Federal review intensifies. Ex-compliance officer central to shareholder action. Board meetings called as stock plummets overnight. Whistleblower emails leaked. Truth emerges. The words blurred into a single pulse of indication. But alongside it came the weight of reality. Cameras, reporters, questions she couldn't ignore. Rachel called almost immediately. It's live. The filings, the shares, everything we discuss, public by 8. Naomi stood, legs unsteady, and walked to the window. Across the street, cars honked as commuters ignored the chaos they couldn't see. For them, life moved forward. For her, life had shifted. They're reacting, Rachel said. Stock is down nearly 10% before opening. Naomi swallowed. And the board? Panicked. Emergency meetings called. Some executives are off the grid. A loud knock startled Naomi. It was Mrs. Alvarez again, peeking in with her usual gentle persistence. You look like someone who could use breakfast. Naomi smiled faintly. Thanks. She ate in silence, scrolling news updates, each article another testament to months of careful, invisible work. Every report she'd submitted, every email they'd ignored, every meeting where she had been spoken over, dismissed, silenced, it all now had power. By 10 a.m., the first live broadcast began. A reporter stood outside the corporate headquarters, rain lightly falling, umbrellas struggling against the wind. Breaking news. Leadership changes announced as federal investigation expands. Former compliance officer Naomi Carter at the center of shareholder trust. Naomi sank into the couch, heart racing. Her name echoed in a way it never had. She'd been erased before. Now she was unavoidable. Rachel joined via video. They're starting to realize you can't be ignored, she said. And you're not done yet. Naomi nodded. I'm ready. At noon, Naomi received calls from the media, requests for statements, interviews. She ignored them, letting Rachel filter the necessary information. This wasn't about vanity. It was about control, her control. By 1 p.m., the company released another statement. We are committed to cooperating fully with investigators. All actions taken were in accordance with corporate policy. We value all employees and stakeholders. Naomi's phone buzzed. Mark Reynolds. She let it ring. It went to voicemail. The afternoon passed in a blur of updates, calls, and document checks. Naomi had legal teams coordinating, journalists waiting, and Rachel guiding each move like a chess master positioning pieces. At 3 p.m., Naomi glanced at the laptop. The trust was live. She could see the allocations, the conditional controls, the way her name now mattered in decisions that had once ignored her existence. Her phone vibrated again. This time, a text from an unknown number. Executives scrambling. Stock dropping. They underestimated you. Naomi exhaled. The rain outside mirrored the torrent inside her mind. Months of being silenced, of being told to fit in, of watching people who abuse power smile and walk away. She could feel the tide turning. Rachel's voice cut through the haze. Tomorrow, you'll wake up a majority shareholder in practical terms. They'll have no choice but to recognize you. Naomi closed her eyes. By morning, they'll belong to me. Yes, Rachel said softly, and the power they wielded over you is gone. The evening news reported further. Executives resigning quietly, stock dipping further, shareholder meetings postponed. Analysts speculated on future corporate strategy. Naomi didn't read the articles closely. The headlines were enough. By 7 p.m., the city lights reflected in her apartment window, orange and white on glass. Naomi sat quietly, staring at them, letting the reality settle. Victory was not a parade. It was measured, silent, procedural, but undeniable. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel, prepare for tomorrow. Your consent is necessary for the first official moves. Naomi typed back, understood. She realized then that ownership wasn't just about numbers or documents. It was about reclaiming space, mental, emotional, and practical, that had been denied her for too long. She had survived humiliation, erasure, coded language, and betrayal. Now she had leverage. Outside, a distant siren echoed. The city moved on, oblivious to the quiet revolution Naomi had set in motion. She smiled faintly. Let them think it's over. Let them think it's luck or timing. They didn't know the preparation, the foresight, the careful precision that had brought her here. By midnight, Naomi shut the laptop, hands folded on the desk. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow of the city. Her mind replayed every insult, every dismissal, every meeting where she had been erased. And now, every word, every document, every report was her weapon. Tomorrow, she would step into a room. They could no longer dominate. Tomorrow, they would see the consequence of underestimating her. She let herself rest for the first time in months, knowing the dawn would bring not just a new day, but a new order. By morning, the headlines would read differently. The power dynamic had shifted, and Naomi Carter was no longer a name they could ignore. The sunlight fell in thin, sharp lines through Naomi's apartment windows. She sipped coffee, fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled through overnight notifications. Emails from lawyers, calls from Rachel, alerts from financial news outlets, all signaling the same truth. The trust was live, her stake secure, and the board was scrambling. By mid-morning, the company's headquarters looked like a ghost town online. Stock tickers reflected panic. Executives resigned quietly. Press releases attempted to spin the chaos as strategic restructuring. But the documents Naomi possessed told the real story. Emails flagged for deletion. Performance reports manipulated. Meetings held in secret. All evidence of the systemic rot she had endured. Naomi exhaled slowly. Ownership didn't feel like triumph. It felt heavy, like stepping into shoes that weren't fully hers yet. The power she had seized came with a weight she hadn't anticipated. Responsibility, visibility, and the undeniable reminder how far she'd been pushed to get here. Rachel appeared on a secure video call. "They're notifying staff," she said. "Some are leaving quietly. Others are waiting to see how far this goes." Naomi rubbed her temples. "They'll hate me." "They already do," Rachel said. "But that's not what matters. The important thing is control. You decide the moves now." Naomi leaned back. She remembered the HR meeting, the folders sliding across the table, the pen clicking with cold precision. She remembered Mark's eyes, the polite disinterest, the invisible judgment of whiteboards and PowerPoints. Every dismissal, every whisper of difficult and emotional had led here, and yet the taste wasn't sweet. It was bittersweet. Justice was procedural, not personal. Her phone buzzed again, a reporter requesting an interview. Naomi ignored it. Her mother called shortly after. "Baby, are you safe?" Her voice trembled slightly. "I hear the news." "I'm safe," Naomi said. "It's complicated, but I'm okay." Her mother sighed. "Complicated. I've been trying to tell you, they don't understand you, but you've always been strong." Naomi smiled faintly. "I had to be." The day passed in a blur of meetings with lawyers, calls with Rachel, and preparations for staff notifications. She drafted a short statement for employees, respectful, direct, and unflinching. She wouldn't gloat. She wouldn't indulge in revenge. She would exercise authority deliberately, showing control without cruelty. By evening, Naomi held a virtual meeting with remaining department heads. Their faces flickered on her screen, some pale, others wary, all uncertain. "I want to address the changes," Naomi began, voice steady. "Effective immediately, a board-led audit is underway, and the trust ensures transparency in all decisions going forward." Eyes shifted. Some nodded. Others looked down. She continued, "I expect all staff to maintain integrity, honesty, and accountability. Retaliation, manipulation, or hiding information will not be tolerated. Period." Her words carried weight, but she could feel the tension. She was no longer the employee they could dismiss. She was the owner they had to answer to. After the meeting, Naomi sank into her chair. Rachel appeared again. "You handled that well," she said. "No theatrics, no anger. They'll respect you more for it." Naomi shook her head. "Respect is fragile. They'll resent me for a long time." Rachel nodded. "Yes, but influence is stronger than popularity. You have that now." That night, Naomi walked the city streets, hoodie pulled tight against the cool air. People passed, unaware of the shift in power that had taken place. She thought of all the microaggressions, the stolen credit, the dismissive nods that had built a wall around her career. They seemed smaller now, irrelevant in the face of structural leverage. Yet the emotional scars remained. At home, Naomi opened the trust documentation again, reviewing the allocation of shares, voting rights, and executive limitations. Each signature, each clause, symbolized control she had fought for at a cost she hadn't fully measured. Sleep would not come easily tonight. Victory was complicated. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark Reynolds. Short, direct. "Congratulations. Didn't think you'd get here." Naomi stared at it, then deleted it without reply. There was no satisfaction in contact. No need to prove anything to him anymore. Later, Naomi checked the news. Analysts debated the company's future. One headline read, "Shareholder Trust Gives Former Employee Oversight Powers. Corporate Governance in Flux." The article detailed the procedural mechanics without mentioning Naomi by name. That was fine. The proof was in the boardroom and the filings. That was enough. Naomi sat quietly for hours, reflecting. Ownership had not healed the humiliation. It had not erased the months of subtle degradation, of being silenced, of navigating coded biases and systemic barriers. But it had given her something stronger: leverage, authority, and the power to prevent future injustice. Finally, she closed her laptop. The city outside her window hummed softly, indifferent. Naomi lay back, hands folded over her stomach, eyes staring at the ceiling. The weight of responsibility mingled with the quiet pride of endurance. Ownership was not vindication. It was control. Control over decisions that had once been denied. Control over the narrative. Control over her life. And for the first time in months, Naomi allowed herself to feel something simple: possibility. Naomi sat in a newly furnished boardroom, the morning sun filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long patterns across the polished oak table. The city moved below her, busy, indifferent, but up here, power had a pulse. She had arrived not as a former employee, not as a symbol of rebellion, but as a central authority, a majority stakeholder with the ability to steer decisions, rewrite policies, and protect those who had been silenced before. Her eyes swept the room. Half the executives were absent, some quietly dismissed, others avoiding eye contact. A few remained, waiting for instructions, for permission, for acknowledgement. Naomi did not speak first. Silence carried weight. "Good morning," she finally said, her voice calm but firm. "We've had a turbulent period. It's time we address it openly." She paused, letting her words sink. "Some of you have made mistakes. Some of you have hurt others, intentionally or not. That stops now." A low murmur traveled across the room. One executive, a man who had previously laughed off her questions about compliance, shifted uncomfortably. Naomi continued, "Apologies are meaningless without action. Today, we set a new standard. Policies will be reviewed. Reports will be transparent. Retaliation and discrimination are no longer tolerated in any form." She gestured to Rachel, who handed her a folder containing employee feedback forms, compliance audits, and notes on ongoing investigations. Naomi held them firmly. The papers like armor, reminders of battles fought and victories earned. An assistant cleared their throat. "Ms. Carter, there's a question about leadership restructuring." Naomi looked at the remaining managers. "Yes, executive roles will be evaluated based on merit and accountability. Positions compromised by unethical behavior will be vacated. This is non-negotiable." A young manager raised her hand tentatively. "What about those who made mistakes but want to learn?" Naomi's gaze softened slightly. "Growth is possible. Responsibility is mandatory. Awareness and action are the minimum. Anything less is unacceptable." The atmosphere shifted. Fear, respect, cautious hope. Naomi had expected resistance, but not silence. She had expected chaos, but not order. The boardroom had become a theater of consequence. Her presence alone altered dynamics that had long been skewed in favor of power and privilege. After the formal address, Naomi stepped out to meet the employees in the main office. Faces reflected surprise, confusion, and curiosity. She did not smile excessively. She did not offer hollow comfort. She spoke plainly. "I know many of you have felt unheard," Naomi began, scanning the room. "You've seen favoritism, mismanagement, and inequity. Today, that changes. Your voices matter, your work matters, and you will be protected when you do the right thing." Some employees nodded. A few clapped quietly. Others stared in disbelief, as if realizing that the person they had once feared or dismissed had returned in a form they could not ignore. Naomi felt the weight of that moment. The responsibility to wield authority ethically, the need to balance justice with compassion, the delicate line between accountability and reprisal. Back in her office, Naomi reflected on the journey that had led here. The termination meeting, the whispered messages, the ignored reports, and the deliberate silences, all had been part of a system designed to erase her. And yet, through strategy, evidence, and unwavering resolve, She had reclaimed not just her position, but her narrative. The irony was not lost on her. Those who had sought to diminish her influence now had to answer to her judgment. Her phone vibrated with a message from a former colleague who had previously distanced themselves. "Thank you for changing things. We see you now." Naomi smiled faintly. Recognition was different from revenge. She did not seek to humiliate. She sought fairness. Her hands, once trembling under pressure and fear, were steady now, ready to guide, correct, and protect. Later that evening, Naomi reviewed the final legal documents. Executives who had attempted cover-ups faced consequences, financial penalties, forced resignations, and public accountability. Shareholders who had relied on misinformation were briefed accurately. The systemic injustice she had endured was not erased, but was counterbalanced by structure, policy, and transparency. Naomi leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. She thought about the emotional cost, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, the constant vigilance, but also about resilience. She had survived humiliation, discrimination, and systemic betrayal, and she had emerged not unscathed, but empowered. Ownership had not erased the pain, but had transformed it into agency. As night fell, Naomi walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. They twinkled like distant promises, indifferent yet full of potential. She allowed herself a brief moment of peace. The battles were not over. She knew that, but she had proven that courage, integrity, and meticulous strategy could dismantle even the most entrenched systems of abuse. Her phone buzzed one last time, a message from Rachel. "You've done it. Control is in your hands." Naomi typed back simply, "Let's make sure it counts." And in that quiet, decisive moment, she understood the full measure of power, not in retribution, not in vengeance, but in responsibility, fairness, and the ability to ensure that what had happened to her could not happen to others. The weight of ownership was heavy, but it was hers to carry with purpose. For the first time since her firing, Naomi allowed herself to feel whole. Not vindicated, not triumphant in the shallow sense, but complete. The system that had tried to erase her had underestimated the truth. Integrity, persistence, and courage could not be silenced. And in that knowledge, Naomi Carter finally breathed freely, knowing she had claimed not just ownership of the company, but ownership of her own destiny.